Somebody call a doctor because bad medicine is back. Over there's Diamond Dave Damone. This is the Appleton Oak. That's the answer. I'm Mason Quinn. Folks, today we are taking a look at the final episode of Chernobyl. This has been an absolutely wild, intense ride. Every adjective you could use, I guess, would describe it. But we are here for the final episode, and I cannot wait to see how this all ends.
Yeah, this has been extremely powerful and moving and just awe-inspiring with some of the shots that they did, which they did a great job. So I'm ready, willing, and able to see this end. And man, this has just been it's been really powerful film, or miniseries, I should say.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, a huge impact on human history, not just of Russia and the USSR, but I mean, it's just incredible the way that they've told this story and how much drama they've been able to tell it with. Wrapping it up is, it's interesting. I'm curious to do some research. I mean, we've gotten a lot of information in the comments all along the way here so far, but once we're done, I'm curious to do research, and I'll definitely be diving into other resources for learning more about this. It's piqued my curiosity that much. But as far as producing a series, I don't think it gets better than this.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing how the end here goes. Craig Mazin and his team and the actors all involved have done exceptionally well, delivering a very good story. Looking forward to seeing what we finish up with. Let's go!
Never be like that again.
Oh, before. With him.
Yeah, because he was working at the plant.
And him.
Yeah, I'm guessing we're going to see all their lives beforehand here, or at least a good majority of them.
What life was like before. Oh, man. What a shot. Showing how close they were crossing paths in life.
And then what's he got in that briefcase?
By the way, Hildur, you'll never see this, but you crushed this score. I won't get sick of saying that.
12 hours before. Wow.
I hear they might promote Brukhanov. This little problem we have with the safety test, if it's completed successfully, yes, I think promotion's very likely. Who knows, maybe Moscow. Naturally, they'll put me in charge once it's gone, and then I'll need someone to take my old job.
I would like to be considered.
We'll keep that in mind. With your approval, we're ready to continue lowering power to...
You have to wait. 3 years I've tried to finish this test. 3 years. I've just had a call from the grid controller in Kiev. He says we can't lower power any further, not for another 10 hours.
The grid controller? Where does he get off telling
Not
us?
the grid controller's decision, the Adlov. I'm running half power, we're not going to have stability issues.
No, I should
I'm
think...
not asking you.
We'll maintain at 1600. I'll go home, get some sleep, come back tonight. We'll proceed then. I'll personally supervise the test, and it will be completed.
Wow.
So he had ambitions of getting promoted.
Call me when it's done.
No, you got the phone call, all right.
Looking around the office, thinking it's going to be his.
What a shot that was.
What an open. See, like little things like that, that's what I'm curious. More so if that actually was real events, dramatized, that kind of thing I'm more curious about.
Yeah, I'm sure they were all pretty hungry to be promoted.
You went to the doctor yesterday. How is your health?
You don't know?
The Chernobyl was solely the result of operator error, which it essentially was. We have you to thank for that, and we intend to.
Hero of the Soviet Union.
Our highest honor.
Wow.
And these rewards are not yours yet. First, your testimony at the trial.
Comrade Zarkov, I understand my duty to the state. You gave us assurances. Reactors would be made safe. It's been months. No changes have been made. No changes even discussed.
First, once it's over, we will have our villains, We will have our hero.
This guy's gambling.
After that, we can deal with the reactors.
Jeez.
Oh, it's
Oh,
starting.
it's starting.
Oh, damn. A year in.
I know how the world works, despite what Shabina says.
So, why are you here?
Because I'm brutally stubborn. At the trial, you're going to tell the truth. You're going to convince a jury.
It's a show trial. The jury's already been handed their verdict.
I'm not talking about them.
Rest of the world.
Do you know what happened to Volkov, the man whose report you found?
They just removed him from his position at the Institute, sacked for the crime of knowing.
And you think that these scientists, handpicked to witness a show trial, will somehow be stirred into action by me? They will shoot me. Khomyuk. I went willingly to an open reactor, so I've already given my life. Isn't that enough?
No, I'm sorry, but it is not.
Well, that's the truth.
Gosh, this music. Love it. Is that the field from everything that was involved?
That's what I'm guessing, because it's got all the
buses,
buses,
trains.
choppers.
Oh, look at that.
Yep.
Yeah, they just put it and built a big fence around it.
The state calls witnesses Comrade Khomyuk of the Belarusian Nuclear Institute, Comrade Legasov of the Kurchatov Institute of Atomic Energy.
Well, how's this going to play?
Are they going to like demonstrate the inside workings of it to kind of paint a picture?
Yeah, I think to give an explanation to people who know nothing about reactors.
Of all things, a safety test. Why was there need for a safety test at all? Reactor number 4 was not new when the accident occurred. Plant director Viktor Brykhanov signed this document, certifying the completion of the construction of the reactor. As a result of finishing the work before the end of the year, Comrade Brykhanov was awarded Hero of Socialist Labor. But the work was not finished, and this document was a lie. Diesel fuel backup generators here. So, problem solved. No. Brykhanov knew that the problem was not solved at all. The backup generators took approximately 1 minute to reach the speed required to power them.
A minute?
And by that time, it would be too late. So we arrive at the safety test. The theory was this. If the facility lost power, the turbine which had been spinning would take some time to slow down and stop. What if you could take the electricity it was still generating and transfer it to the pumps? What if the dying turbine could keep the pumps working long enough to bridge the 60-second gap?
Oh, no.
Oh, thanks.
The first time they tried, they failed. The second time they tried, they failed. The third time they tried, they failed. The fourth time they tried was April 26, 1986.
Wow.
Comrade Khomyuk.
This is about to get interesting.
Interesting how the camera's not steady. It's the camera's moving and shaking and stuff when they had those shots.
By 2 in the afternoon, the reactor has been lowered by half from its normal output level of 3,200 megawatts to 1,600 megawatts and is stable and ready to be reduced to its final output level for the test, 700 megawatts. Before they can proceed, there is a phone call. Power grid officials in Kiev say that they cannot afford a further reduction in electricity until after midnight. They are asking for a 10-hour delay. This is the first critical moment, the first link in the chain of disaster. Management would have insisted on cancelling the test. These 3 men allowed it to proceed. There is a shift change.
Love when they give the visual.
It's a whole different crew than what they thought they'd be working with.
Another test they're supposed to run, the turbine rundown. They tried it last year. They couldn't do it on the day shift, so they've given it to us.
To us? We don't know what...
Oh!
Been cleared to run the test. 1,600 good. Is it too much to ask that you all know what you're doing?
Well, yes, absolutely.
I haven't reviewed. We only just found out we're there. Review it. Or you can just do what I tell you. I think even you, stupid as you are, can manage that.
Oh.
Yeah, an attitude like that always goes well.
This is not good. Shut the fuck up and do your job. Topped and off. Reduce power to 700.
Never done this with power so low before. It's okay, I'm with you.
Wow. Knowing what's going to happen, it's still like impactful.
I want you to imagine that he has been told nothing of his mission into space until the moment that he is on the launch pad. The night shift had not been trained to perform the experiment. They hadn't even been warned it was happening. Leonid Toptonov, the operator responsible for controlling and stabilizing the reactor that night, was all of 25 years old. And his total experience on the job, 4 months. This is the human problem created by the delay. But inside the reactor core, in the space between the atoms themselves, the time is 28 past midnight.
Oh, the handoff.
Comrade Legasov.
Look at this.
Oh, the way they're doing
shot.
this camera, it's like, is he feeling it and the effects and everything?
Well, that's also like, to me, I'm taking it in as like, is he thinking about staying the state line or the towing the line or
telling the truth?
It's him where he's gotta breathe, you know, because
As uranium atoms split apart and collide, reactivity goes up. But if you don't balance the reactivity, it never stops rising. So, boron control rods. They reduce reactivity like brakes on a car. But there's a third factor to consider.
That was a nice touch.
Yeah.
that might have actually happened. So that's...
If you can't understand how a stalled nuclear reactor could lead to an explosion, I don't blame you. After all, you don't work in the control room of a nuclear power plant. But as it turned out, the men who didn't understand it either.
Oh, they didn't.
10 other men in this plant would have done it already. Keep working, you're doing fine. Kirschenbaum, come get me when these old women are ready.
Yes, Comrade Dyatlov.
You're not working fast enough on the nuclear reactor.
Yeah, no kidding.
Okay, very slow now. Let's ease it down to 700.
Oh no. So it was panic.
Oh no.
Not even touching it.
Dude, my heart is sinking. It's like being on a roller coaster, you know, with that feeling when you drop.
I think if we turn off LAC, it may be possible to get more control.
Do it, go.
Right, switch off local automatic control. Go to global. Leonid.
LAC disabled, global control activated.
Oh, it's even worse.
What did you do?
I did what you said. I switched.
Look at it! What are you doing?
We have to shut all the way down.
No.
Well, we could be in a Xenol pit. We have to shut down wait 24 hours.
No, we're doing the test tonight. Raise power to 700.
Whoa.
The rules.
Don't talk to me about rules.
If we fall from 80%.
No, we fell from 50% power. The rules don't say 50. There is no rule.
Comrade Dyatlov, I apologize, but what you're saying makes no sense.
Raise the power.
No.
See, if I say it's safe, it's safe. And if the two of you disagree, then you don't have to work here, and you won't. I think you know I will see to it. Raise the power.
Oh man, this is just intense.
I would like you to record your command.
Raise the power.
Wow. Doesn't even want to be on the hook for it.
Together then.
Man, at what point do you just walk off and say, you know what, buddy?
I wasn't in the room when they raised the power.
If you weren't there, then where were you?
Legasov, you are a witness, not a prosecutor. I will ask the questions here. If you weren't in the room, then where were you?
The toilet.
Oh, jeez.
But if I didn't do what he said, I would be fired. Leonid Toptonov. He ordered them to raise the power. This is a fact.
Court is now in recess. 30 minutes.
Oh, if I tried to even say he wasn't in the room and they totally called him on it. Wow.
Well, he knows the consequences.
Oh, yeah. So,
This episode is just intense. We're not even close to being done, I don't think.
No one ever thinks it's going to happen to them. And here we are. I hoped that one day I would matter, but I didn't.
They mistakenly sent the one good man.
God's sakes, Boris. You were the one who mattered most.
Some damn good dialogue between those two in this.
Look at that shot.
Oh, it's beautiful.
Yeah, life literally in his hands.
Well, I think it's also obviously representative of transformation and
Growth.
yeah.
The time is 38 past midnight. The reactor is nearly shut down. The operators of Reactor 4 are locked on a path that leads directly to disaster. They do not yet know it, but the die is cast. At 30 megawatts, xenon is still being created, but none of it is burning away. The reactor isn't hot enough to produce sufficient steam. The only way to safely raise power from this state is to do it very, very slowly over the course of 24 hours. They begin pulling control rods out, dozens at a time. Halfway out, 3/4 of the way out, still the power does not budge. So they begin pulling them all the way out. The control rods are out. The emergency system has been disconnected. The only thing keeping the reactor in check is water and xenon.
But the test requires 700.
Stelyarchuk, let's get ready. Switch on pump 4.
Oh, wait a second.
Stelyarchuk.
We have barely enough steam as it is. The turbine is going too slow for the test to deliver any valid results. And if we had more water, there will be even
I said it's enough. I know what I'm doing. Stelyarchuk.
1:22 a.m. Less than 2 minutes remain. Yuvchenko, a mechanical engineer, is in his office.
Oh boy, here it comes.
High above the 1,000-ton steel reactor cover. Based on the absence of sufficient control rods, the computer is recommending that the reactor be shut down.
This is.
Well, of course it's saying that. It doesn't know we're running a test. All right, comrades.
So many chances to stop it.
Did everything right.
Closing number 8 throttle valve.
Oh, dude, the tension build up to this moment.
With every decision, they have pulled this reactor back like a slingshot, further than anyone has ever pulled. Now the test begins. The pumps are shut down, and they've let go. The pumps stop moving water through the reactor. Uranium fuel is now unchecked by fresh coolant, unchecked by control rods. The balance immediately swings in the opposite direction. In less than a second, reactivity increases. The remaining water is quickly converting to steam. A void is being created. There is no fresh water to replace it. Steam increases reactivity, increases heat, increases steam, increases reactivity. The remaining xenon decays away. The power is rising. There's nothing left to stop it. 1:23 and 35 seconds.
Oh.
We have a power surge, Sasha.
Oh,
man.
In every control room of every nuclear reactor in the world, there is a button with one single purpose. Scram or instantly shut down the reaction.
No way to avoid what was coming. He knows something.
Comrade
He
Yachov.
knows something.
Still have more evidence to give.
It's not necessary. Your testimony is concluded, Your Honor.
Court is now.
Just getting shoved off?
Let him finish.
That was a powerful moment right there.
Dyatlov broke every rule we have. He did these things believing there was a failsafe. AZ-5, a simple button to shut it all down. But in the circumstances he created, there wasn't. The shutdown system had a fatal flaw.
This is where it comes.
yep.
Akimov engages AZ-5. The fully withdrawn control rods begin moving back into the reactor. These rods are made of boron, which reduces reactivity, but not the tips. The tips are made of graphite, which accelerates reactivity.
Why?
We don't use properly enriched fuel in our cores. For the same reason, we are the only nation that builds water-cooled, graphite-moderated reactors with a positive void coefficient. It's cheaper.
He's dropping the hammer now.
That's even what the owners said.
The reaction in the core, which had been rising, skyrockets. Every last molecule of liquid water
instantly converts to steam, which expands and ruptures a series of fuel rod channels. The control rods in those channels can move no further. Chernobyl Reactor 4 is now a nuclear bomb. 123.42.
Oh my.
The steam blows more fuel channels apart. We do not know how high the power went. We only know the final reading.
Whoa.
Oh.
Designed to operate at 3,200 megawatts, went beyond 33,000.
Oh.
123.45, explosion. The chain of disaster is now complete.
Wow.
Oh.
And there's
the graphite.
Tip.
And here's our beginning.
Yeah, and he knew. Dyatlov knew the whole time.
No one in the room that night knew the shutdown button could act as a detonator. They didn't know it because it was kept from them.
He didn't know.
Not the only one who kept the secrets. There are many who are following orders from the KGB, from the Central Committee, and right now there are 16 reactors in the Soviet Union with the same fatal flaw. 3 of them are still running, less than 20 kilometers away at Chernobyl. When the truth offends, we lie and lie until we can no longer remember it is even there, but it is still there. Every lie we tell incurs a debt to the truth. Sooner or later, that debt is paid. That is how an RBMK reactor core explodes.
Man, everyone brought their A game for this episode.
Oh, wow.
Holy
Yeah,
shit.
powerful monologues.
Oh boy.
Well, there's not much you can do to a guy who's already dying.
No. I'm really intrigued to see what this conversation is going to be about. Down in a kitchen. Let me help you.
They can figure out what they're going to do with them.
He thinks he's going to get gassed.
That shot kind of represented to me the floor of the
Yeah, of the reactor.
that lid.
Oh, I thought he thought something was going to come up through there.
The slow back out shot.
Valery Alexeyevich Legasov, head of Ideological Compliance, Central Committee. Do you know your father did that?
Yes.
As a student, you had a leadership position in Komsomol, communist youth, correct?
You already know.
Answer the question.
Yes.
At the Chute Institute, you were the Communist Party secretary. In that position, you limited the promotion of Jewish scientists.
Yes.
To curry favor with Kremlin officials. You're one of us, Legasov. I can do anything I want with you. But what I want the most is for you to know that I know. You're not brave. You're just a dying man who forgot himself.
I know what I've done. In a just world, I'd be shot for my lies, but not for this, not for the truth.
Scientist. And your idiot obsession with reasons. No one's getting shot, Legasov. The whole world saw you in Vienna. It would be embarrassing to kill you. Your testimony today will not be accepted by the state. It will not be disseminated in the press. It never happened.
Total control.
You keep your title and your office, but no duties, no authority, no friends. No one will talk to you. No one will listen to you. Other men, lesser men, will receive credit for the things you have done. Your legacy is now their legacy. You'll live long enough to see that.
Wow.
What role did Homyuk play in this?
None.
After all you've said and done today, it would be curious if you chose this moment to lie.
Oh, what a line.
I would think a man of your experience would know a lie when he hears one.
You will not communicate with anyone about Chernobyl ever again.
After everything he's done.
Why worry about something that isn't going to happen?
Why worry about something that isn't going to happen? Oh, that's perfect. They should put that on our money.
Oh, that wallpaper looks like a chain link fence.
Yeah.
That's kind of messing with my eyes a little bit too, because it's like not like defined. It's a little like blurry.
So at least in the show, I assume that's the last time they saw each other.
I'm wondering if that was the same car too from the beginning that he saw when he took out his trash.
Oh, that they probably all use the same cars. Like over here, how the FBI uses Suburbans. Yeah.
To be a scientist is to be naive.
Here's our tapes.
Focused on our search for truth, we fail to consider how few actually want us to find it. Where I once would fear the cost of truth, now I only ask, what is the cost of lies?
Open and ended with it.
Yep.
Oh.
Okay, there you go. That makes sense.
Oh, he only lived a few more years.
You said 5.
Oh, it's
very
weird
good
looking
job
at their
casting.
weird looking at their actual faces, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Return to work? Jesus.
95, huh?
9 years he lived.
Wow.
All right.
Jesus.
Wow.
582.
645.
Jesus. Oh, Jesus.
Oh, wow.
Look at that. Oh.
Yeah,
oh
I remember we saw that.
Oh, my God. None survived the bridge of death. 100 of them died before the age of 40.
Wow.
Wow.
Boy, if there's anybody I wouldn't have expected.
Yeah.
That's it, yeah. Sure they didn't. Jesus.
Yeah.
Well, at that time, like, nobody knew fully.
Right.
Jesus. Never thought of it that way.
Yeah, but that's...
Yeah, exactly.
Wow.
That's quite a range.
Jesus.
Wow.
Damn, man. I can't believe they were able to take the decimeter and make it into one of the most terrifying sounds
Yeah.
possible.
Yeah, when you know
This
the
is-
story behind it.
This is just so damn impressive with
Yeah.
what
Well, I
she
mean-
was able to do with this score.
Yeah, and it's done in such a different way because, like, you know, I know, like, Oak and I growing up watching movies in the 80s, like, things being nuclear and radioactivity, that was like a big theme in movies, and we, you know about Geiger counters and that sort of thing, but never seen it used on this level before. It's just incredible.
Folks, if there's any kind of like behind the scenes for her, Hilder's score, composition, or how she built all this, I would love to. Maybe I'll just even search right after this. Either way, but if you guys know about something, let me know, because I'm really intrigued to see how she did all this to make it perfection. In my eyes. I know it's subjective, but in my eyes, this is perfection, pretty much.
Yeah, I mean, I can't imagine a miniseries being done any better than this. You take something that I think most people kind of know about, Are we going to go into the deal? Okay. Yeah. So, what I wanted to get at was I think it's so impressive they take something that a lot of people know about, right? Like you say, Chernobyl. A vast majority of people are going to have some concept or idea of what you're talking about because of how famous it was. And as they said, it very well could have been part of the reason the Soviet Union is no more. So that was incredible to see. Anytime you're dealing with something real life, that's one thing. And then you're dealing with something that's real life on such a level, it's, nearly impossible to imagine. But the way that the crew put this together and was able to pull it off to tell a compelling story, because look, the documentaries have been out there forever and a lot of folks haven't watched them, and for right or wrong, whatever it might be, maybe it just didn't draw an interest. So I think when you do something like this and you're able to draw an interest, you're able to tell a story, you're able to get people invested. Look, I think that's incredibly important because people need to know about these sort of things. Why did it happen? What caused it to happen? It wasn't just the reactor. You're talking about an absolute breakdown of a government that essentially wanted to ignore the truths, and everything was a lie and everybody was looking to be promoted. Go ahead with the test no matter what. I want to be promoted. I want to have the big office. And I just think it's genuinely important, regardless if there's been anything dramatized, if anything is not 100% accurate. Like, look, who can say what's really 100% accurate? They won't even acknowledge the actual death toll. Yeah. So for anybody, look, I know there's people who are experts and in the field, or people who are very knowledgeable on the subject, not to discount that, but I'm just saying, how can any of us truly know the exact details of what happened? And I just think that the team that worked on this did the absolute best they could. I got a feeling everybody from, the lead actors to the folks who were driving the vehicles, the folks in catering, the people doing sound, I think everybody knew that this was an important series and they did their absolute best on it. And it just shows. The set design, the music that was used, it was all incredible. And I just think that anytime you can have a story like this, we saw it kind of similar with Hacksaw Ridge. That was a story that not a lot of people are familiar with, but my God, is it important for people to know. And it's such a powerful event in history, and this is exactly that. This is something that should be known. If and it takes a series on HBO to make people know about it, well, then so be it. But all that being said, all me kind of preaching from my soapbox a little bit there, this was an amazing series. I think one of the best we've ever done, if not the best. Just stunning from top to bottom, just as an entertainment, viewpoint of it. Incredibly entertaining. Just did not stop from the first episode, had me sucked in. So for that, I thought it was just absolutely incredible.
Like we said, Joe, I got a D in history, so as much as I kind of knew maybe about this, I didn't know to what extent it was and how corrupt everything was over there. But the underlining thing was how cheap that they made everything. They made that a point of emphasis throughout the whole miniseries. They had a joke, I believe in episode 1 or 2, that when they got the lunar rover, oh, it's a cheap piece of crap, that's why it went out. It's like, no, it might have been cheap, but it still was around all that radiation. So they wanted to drive home the whole fact that it was cheap. So then during the trial, he says this is what Legazov was like, yes, the reason why we have graphite tips is because everything else in our country, it's cheap. And so then we lie and say everything is fine. And then he even pointed out that there was 3 more reactors in 20-kilometer radius that had the same flaws.
Yeah, the miners made that joke about the apple slicer, that it wouldn't work. Yep. It'd be overbuilt and use too much energy.
Exactly. So they made sure they made that point of emphasis because, and I don't know if that if the meltdown did lead towards the fall of the Soviet Union, but they definitely show in this movie that they had a lot more going wrong than right, and keeping secrets from the state, keeping the lies, and that's never going to be a good thing. Like you said, we saw that they only acknowledged 31 for the death total when there's a wide range there of 4 to 93,000. So this show is just brilliantly done. The acting, you said everyone brought their A game this last episode. They did. They had powerful monologue after powerful monologue after powerful monologue from everyone in this. And I mean, Skarsgård, like, he is amazing in everything he does. So he started off great. Then Emily Watson was amazing in her role. As we saw, it was a combination of everybody, of all the scientists that did go into trying and prove that he was correct. And so she crushed it as well. And then obviously Jared Harris was at the end, and he did a powerful monologue. They did the recess where he could get Skarsgård to Boris tell him about, he's coughing up blood, and so he already knows his fate. And then he comes back with another powerful monologue, and it was just amazing to watch. And the music, the cinematography, like Dave touched on it when Valerie was getting up and the camera was focused on him, but it was kind of waving. Oak pointed out how they didn't keep it stable, so it made it all the more impactful for watching the scene and just getting the point across of all the things that went into this meltdown. And I loved how they did the go back in time to what was happening that night to actually give you each moment by moment that it started with, and we didn't like Love at the beginning, and it turns out, he was the one that was really forcing this to happen because he wanted to get a promotion, get a raise, and it ended up costing dearly. And this was just a powerful show. Wow, I can't say enough. Yes, it is one of the best shows that we have watched on this channel.
Yeah, HBO. Now, I haven't seen like Sopranos. There's probably a couple other shows that I really haven't seen on HBO, but for the ones that I did, this one is like top notch. And I love Last of Us, but I can see why they went out and got Craig Mazin and his team to handle with Neil on The Last of Us, because the way they shot this, it showed me a lot of what was in here is now in Last of Us. And I started with Last of Us, kind of seeing what they did here. I saw a lot of his cinematic work, cinematography, kind of bleed through to each other, and it's awesome. It's brilliant. You guys are probably sick of me here saying this already. Hilder crushed this score. I love every one of you dropping comments in about how she did it and approached it. I hope she gets a lot more, because she needs to be recognized for the music that she did in this. And I'm sure she's getting a lot of work, but I hope she gets even more work as we go on, because brilliant job to get you even more sucked in it, especially with 5 episodes. Tons of information here, right? Now, yes, dramatized. There's aspects to that, right? We've gotten a handful of those in the comments. Some facts are used in here, right? It's a blend. I think we can all agree on safely for that. So what I'm going to kind of talk about is more what was in here presented to us. So that's how I'm going to talk about Chernobyl, at least for here. I thought the story that they told here in this episode was just brilliant, unique, especially like you were mentioning. Some of these shots were just fantastic. A lot of parallels of like with the caterpillar, kind of basically it's subjective. Take whatever you want out of that, which I loved. That Mickey shot as Jared Harris was getting thrown into the downstairs kitchen. They centered on that and they panned out. I don't know what to think about that. I would love to see your guys' comments on what that was meant to be or what you thought it was meant to be, because I don't know if Craig Mazin, maybe he came out on his HBO podcast and said it. Either way, love to see what your answers are for that. The trial.
Do you guys have a thought on that at all, or since
not
you're
on the
asking?
Mickey, but I thought I did love your comparison to the drain on the floor. You thought of that maybe to the steel floor in the core.
Yeah, it was just cool to see.
I mean, I don't know if that has any parallel, but that was pretty cool to think, actually, as you said it.
Yeah, I think the Mickey thing can be taken a couple different ways. One, they talked about how cheap the Soviet Union was and how everything was
cheap knockoff of Mickey Mouse.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
So you kind of represented in a very serious way a cheap knockoff, but on the flip side of that, there's also this state pride that you see repeated throughout this show, and you wonder if they're like, well, the Americans have this Mickey, we'll make a better version of Mickey. And that was like, it was like them copying Mickey Mouse, but putting their own spin on it because they were the Soviets and they could do it better. So I guess it's completely subjective, but part of me felt like, okay, it's supposed to represent knockoff and cheapness, and part of it was supposed to represent maybe the pride, and I don't think they would throw that in there if it wasn't a real thing. Maybe that was something over there. But those, I mean, not to cut you off, but that's what I took.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask since you were throwing the question out there. But sorry, Dave. Continue.
Yeah, and the floor drain, that to me, because they just showed that shot of that cover, right, of all those things going, and then a couple minutes later, you see the floor drain. At least that's what kind of shot in my head. Now, again, subjective. I'm sure people, like Dave was thinking something else, but I'm sure maybe others thought something different. Now, seeing this, I do want to go back to some of the YouTube suggestions that some of you recommended, because I want to learn more about it now. Because again, yes, some of it was dramatized, probably for sure. Some of it had some facts that were pushed behind some of the narrative story here. But again, I'd like to see how many people knew a little. And then after this, you definitely did like a deep dive into finding out more. And I'm also going to kind of take that with a grain of salt, because everybody knows that in high power, not everything is going to be 100%, right? But at least I want to see what's what. At least we know from like Craig Mazin saying some stuff from the trial. I want to see how much he pulled from that. Obviously, they only had an hour to play with here, so I'm sure that trial was not in a day or two or week. I'm sure it took a long time. So again, coming off of this right now, fresh from it, I just might be biased because I'm in a moment, but this was damn good. All the actors, kudos, but especially kudos because they never get the shine is to Craig and his team, because they're behind the scenes. You don't see the faces. The actors are expected to do well. They crushed it, but huge shout out to Craig and his team, because there's a lot on that back end that they need to do to make us feel a certain way, whether it's happy, whatever emotion you want to throw out there. So kudos to all of you. Top-notch stuff here.
Yeah, and speaking of that, Dave, I mean, they really broke a lot of rules with this. One, by having the actors speak in their normal voices and their normal language, dialect, whatever you want to call it. I touched on that in the first episode. I thought that was really done. And so just a lot of things that were kind of done differently. I mean, a big-time miniseries with this type of special effects and acting powerhouse and music. It's done, but not often. So I thought they really broke some ground on this one.
Real quick before you go, Dave, the go back to showing us when the timeline, like you were kind of saying, answer. I thought that was brilliant, because I didn't think they were going to show us, because I thought in episode 1 when they showed us, they put us in the moment immediately. I thought that was it. I didn't think they were actually going to come back. Do what they did for that visual medium for everyone to piece it together.
Yep.
Genius stuff.
Yeah, it's brilliant.
Yeah, I mean, I can't say enough about this show. If I'm being perfectly honest, and when we had originally talked about doing this series, Diamond Dave had asked who'd all seen it, and I said, I saw it when it came out, but I don't recall much of it. I've said a handful of times throughout, I don't know how much of it made the cut. But I've said a handful of times that I watched it kind of casually at my home, phone ringing, dogs barking, bathroom breaks, whatnot. If I'm being perfectly honest, I don't really recall much from this episode at all. At the time I was, 2019, 2020 when this came out, I was very involved with my work at the Humane Association, but I don't even know if I watched this episode. I think I may have checked out after, given the nature of the last episode. So this very much felt like a first-time watch for me, and it's just super powerful. It's weird when we think about that many people losing their lives. We think about wars, right? A lot of, we can talk about,
or even just affected.
Yeah, I mean,
right.
But
27 million Russians after World War II.
For something like this to impact so many people, not because of a war, not because of this, not because of that, just because of cutting corners on construction. As as Legasov said, no other countries in the entire world use graphite tips, and they have shielding and stuff like that to prevent something like this from even happening. It's crazy when it's an accident and just carelessness. That it was part construction, but part just complete recklessness on Dyatlov's part. And we saw at the end, he wanted that test to get done to impress his boss, basically, so he would be considered. Had the tests gone well, we saw that the one gentleman was probably going to get promoted. The other guy wanted to take his job. And Fomin, he said somebody other than Dyatlov's name when, you like, as they were going through that conversation, you thought he was going to turn to Dyatlov and say, your name is going to be considered. And he said somebody else's name, and Dyatlov threw it out there, and it would seem as if, and of course we can't say one way or the other with any level of certainty, but it would seem as if his actions were to try to, solidify his spot for that promotion, and be the number of people who suffered because of that. I mean, yes, there was issues with the reactor cores and the graphite tips and stuff, but at the end of the day, had they not gone forward with those tests, this wouldn't have happened. Now, to say it wouldn't have happened in the future at a different date or whatever, it's who knows. But so it's tough to look at how many people were impacted by cutting corners, and then of course, by human error. It's really difficult. This is a very powerful story, and it, I mean, answer jokes about his history grades, but I don't recall learning that much about Chernobyl in history here. And to be perfectly honest, as intriguing as this story is, and as huge of an impact as this had, putting it in this medium for the audience makes you so much more invested. It creates a story, it creates a visual, it creates drama, it gets you interested. And and not knowing a lot about this, I think a lot of people probably didn't before this. Like Mason Quinn said, we knew what happened, we knew what went on, but you don't think of it in the same regard. You don't think of how many people were impacted. You don't think of the bravery of the firefighters and the hospital workers and everybody. You don't think about what people like Legasov and Sherbina risked just being there, and my God, the miners that went there, those
600,000 people,
and then the people went in after. I mean, even just the miners, those guys, they knew, going in that this was it, right? And they went in and they did it anyhow. I mean, the bravery of those miners alone is really hard to wrap your head around. But I really just, I don't think as reactors we always give enough credit to the crews and the directors and the writers and everybody who worked on it. But this story could have been told in a documentary style that people would have skipped over 99 times out of 100 had they saw it on Netflix or on Amazon or on HBO. And the fact that they presented it the way they did, you had no choice but to get sucked in and drawn in. The fact that as many people recommended it to us as they did is very telling of how powerful this story was. So I just can't say enough. Craig Mazin and his entire crew, the actors. I mean, was there a single performance by any actor in this entire series that wasn't just an absolute home run, just so powerful? And big shout out to the actors too, because I would imagine as an actor going into any sort of work of fiction or certain types of documentaries, you go in and you're like, yeah, I'm happy to have this job and I get to perform and I get to do my thing. But the actors going into this, it's like, this is a very serious role. Like, you are tasked as an actor with telling this story. Like, I feel like the tone on set almost had to be very serious. You're not just going in and creating some work of fiction. And you're not just sitting down and telling a documentary either. You're trying to do this story and these people's lives justice. So to the actors as well, I just can't say enough. This entire project was done so well. I agree with Diamond Dave. I would like to now go and watch other documentaries, and I know there's so much good stuff on YouTube about Chernobyl, and I would like to really dive into learning a little bit more about it, because I hope it doesn't come across morbid, but it is very fascinating, everything that happened there. It was crazy seeing the scene after of them holding the dosimeter by the clothes that are in the Pripyat. And, you know, it was at
in the hospital.
The hospital, 500 and 600 some Wrongton. And remember earlier on in the show, they're like, oh yeah, if it's 3 an hour, that's dangerous.
Mm-hmm.
3 is dangerous, and you're talking 600, and this is 40 years later. You know, I mean, it's wild. Or 35 years later, whenever this was shot. But to think that those clothes just sitting there this many years later have a deadly amount of radiation is wild.
Yeah, I thought it was fascinating too to see here that they showed us that Ulana, his character was a representation of X amount of people. So very intriguing the way that, again, I only saw or heard half an hour of Craig Mazin's episode 2, so I can't remember what's all in there, but it's unique to see, the storytelling that he was trying to get across of how he compiled like all that into one person, but still obviously probably not every bit of information, but enough to help propel the story the way that he was trying to tell it here. So this ending here of them showing us a bunch of information that they probably couldn't fully get in there, came in here at the end is, amazing too. So that's why I can't wait to read some more of your comments and then do some deep dives into some of those channels you all recommended, because this is some fascinating stuff. Unfortunate, but fascinating.
Yeah, well, and here's something to consider too. If this doesn't happen, if Chernobyl doesn't have the meltdown, there's 16 other nuclear power plants in Russia that are the exact same. They're never inspected. They never get looked after because there's no reason to. Nothing ever gets brought up. What did the KGB guys say? God, I wish I could remember it, where Jared Harris said you should have that printed on our money. I forget what the line was, but it was so good because it's like, look, if that doesn't happen, then all these other ones don't get taken care of. I mean, that's a world ender, or damn close to it, if all 16 of those go off.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you know what's interesting? The other thing that they didn't touch on too much. Why worry about something that isn't going to happen?
Exactly, and they wouldn't have. None of those plants would have ever been checked out. They never would have replaced the graphite tips if that's what they did. None of that would have happened.
It's interesting that that they put it in at the end that Gorbachev says that he thinks Chernobyl impacted, or at least had a role to play in the dissolution of the Soviet Union. And when you look at just the recurring theme of this perception of power, right? This perception of we have the best scientists in the world. Like, look, even if we can go back into sports. I mean, the Russians very much wanted the best athletes in the world. They wanted the best everything in the world, the best scientists, the best economy, the best everything in the world. And it was all about this perception. And when Chernobyl happened, it exposed so much, it's weird when you look back at the entire Cold War period. I mean, we discussed it in another earlier episode. I don't know if it made the cut, but there's people all over the United States building underground bunkers and bomb shelters. I mean, downtown Appleton has an entire, I don't know if you guys even know this, downtown Appleton has an entire network of underground tunnels and bomb shelters under College Avenue for this. And they did it all over they did it all over Russia as well for the threat of nuclear war. And when you look at what actually came out of the Cold War, it was like this back and forth tension. Who had more power? Yeah. The space race, the science race, this race, that race, all for the perception of power. And it was so crazy to think.
Like they said in an earlier episode, they didn't want to tell the West. We can't.
They didn't want to tell the West. We can't tell the West.
And the first thing too was this something done by the Americans?
Yeah. They thought was it an attack?
It was your own people.
Was it attacked by the Americans? So yeah, this is very interesting. It's crazy for me, and this will be the last thing I say. I've talked multiple times on this channel about my father passing. And I watched this in 2019. My father passed in the summer of 2021, and I didn't know this until a couple of years ago, to be honest. So my father was in the Air Force, and we always thought he had some random Air Force job. We didn't find out until a couple of years ago that my father was him and his unit were very high-ranking, super classified essentially they wiretapped and spied on other countries. You know, and if you knew my dad, he was a teacher and a history teacher and a football coach, and you just don't think of that, and it's nothing he talked about. And I didn't know it until shortly before, maybe a year before he passed. And he was right on the border of East and West Germany. He served in the U.S. Air Force Security Services from 64 to 68, and we didn't know until a couple years ago that he was wiretapping the Soviets for 4 years in West Germany. In fact, this is an interesting story, which I'll tell here because it doesn't bear on us. My father actually had a piece of the Berlin Wall, which was highly, highly illegal in the 60s to touch the wall. And when he passed and we cleaned out his house and everything, we did not find it. So we don't know where my dad hid it, but he had an accident, so he didn't tell us. And ironically enough, he had told us on a couple occasions, when I'm on my deathbed, there's a lot that I could tell you. My father took his military service very, very seriously, so you know, he wasn't going to tell anything, and he had an accident, so we never heard, and a lot of what he knew was classified. But now watching this, and the reason I bring it up is because I'm like, I wonder how much shit my dad knew about the Soviet Union, because I knew we wiretapped and all the crazy stuff that went on there during the Cold War. But there were so many secrets, and I'm sure today there's still lots of national secrets that go on between all kinds of countries. But it's interesting that, you know, Answer touched upon it. They didn't want the West to know. They didn't want the West to know. They didn't want the West to know. And you wonder, had there not been that tension post World War II between the East and West and the Soviets and the United States and other countries, if something like this even happens, or if, you know, there's so much, I don't know.
Yeah. Well, this has been a very powerful series to watch. We thank you for suggesting it. It was.
If it wasn't for you suggesting, I would still not have.
I would not have seen it, and
I wouldn't have. I can tell you, I would not have rewatched it.
And just to see all the performances and everybody, what they did behind and in front of the camera was just amazing. So for Diamond Dave, Appleton Oak, that's Mason Quinn. I'm, of course, Answer. Good night, pals.